how do you keep everyone close to create the more intimate environment that matches the tone that you're looking to set? We can move the whole class back there. I'm okay with that.
No.
We just need to be close, that's all.
Bro.
All right.
Yeah, we want to cancel the listening. Ask him to check and start checking and cancel it. San Francisco listening? Mom's house. Sorry, go ahead.
It's all right. It's all right.
Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, we're gonna have a blast. Yes. We're recording? We are recording. I'm not supposed to say that? It's an honor to be here. I know you all, but for anyone up there at the camera, I'm Joe. I'm the operating principal here at KW Advisors Fremont, and I love talking and teaching about investing, and that's what we're going to talk about today, specifically through the context of being a real estate agent. What is available to us? What can we take advantage of as real estate agents? What are things that we should be thinking of? How can we take that knowledge and apply it to our real estate business as well? We'll touch just a little bit on that, depending on how interested you guys are. And so we've got up to 2 hours. We don't have to take all that time, but I want to make sure that we're creating the best learning environment possible. So I'd like to start out with picking one of the 6 personal perspectives in which we can view this content together. There may not be like new information for you today. There probably will be, but it's more about shifting perspective. Sometimes we go to these classes not because we need the information, but because we need to be reminded or shift our mindset around the information. So that's the big goal here. So who remembers any of the 6 personal perspectives? I know Steve does. This was actually Steve's idea to start with one of the 6 personal perspectives in our trainings and team meetings. And I think it's a great idea, so here we are. Do you have a favorite that you'd like to...
I didn't mean to put you under this.
No, I love it. I love it.
Well, that's the way it was done in the old days.
Yeah. Well, I think the one that's most appropriate well, there's a lot that are. The one that comes to mind for me that's resonating as I think about this class's content and what we're trying to do here is E to P. So going from entrepreneurial to purposeful. Now we think about that often in a business context because we're entrepreneurs by definition, running our own business. But really the meaning behind, to me, the meaning behind that 6 personal perspectives is going from what comes naturally, what comes by default, to doing something with intentionality, with purpose, that may not always be the easiest thing. And that's the mindset shift that I hope all of us can have some little breakthrough or some giant breakthrough as it relates to our wealth and our investing, to go from what comes naturally and what we do by default to doing something with intention. Does that sound good? Cool. All right. Yeah?
The limiting belief one, I like it.
Yes. What does that mean to you, and how can we support you in that?
Just constantly remind yourself that you can achieve anything you want as long as you put your mind to it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think your words matter. When you say, "Oh, I can't do it," that comes to fruition. You say, "Can't."
Right.
It's say, "I can't do it."
Right. Yeah, it's amazing hearing people. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts lately, hearing people's stories of going from an average person to insane success. John Cena was my most recent one, the wrestler. I actually hadn't heard of him until pretty recently, but it turns out he's very famous. And he was working in a gym. Like, that's how he got his start. He was at Gold's Gym. I forget what he was selling or building weight machines. Anyway, someone was like, you should try this next thing. And then he just went down this path and had no limiting beliefs about what was possible for him. And now he is an actor and what do you call it, wrestler, and is insanely successful. Hi, thank you for coming. Because he broke through his limiting beliefs. So I love that. Do you want to share a limiting belief around investing in money?
I'd say, people think that you can't in the future make a lot of money from just putting away money from your checks into index funds or Roth
Mhm.
IRAs. Like those little amounts you put add up in the future. And they
Yeah.
don't understand that until they actually try it. It's like a limiting belief, you know.
Right. Like no amount of logic sometimes helps. They have to feel it for themselves. Are you experiencing that?
A little bit.
Yeah, okay. Okay. All right. Well, let's see if we can help break through that limiting belief. So I call this class the path of money because I think it's a really important concept to understand that really we don't have a lot of choices, a lot of buckets, a lot of options when it comes to what happens with money. Now, yes, you can get into the details and create an infinite number of options, but when you think about what happens when money comes in, you only have four choices of what to do with it. You can spend it, you can save it, you can donate it, or you can invest it, or pay taxes on it. There's kind of a half of a fit. But it really distills down into those four things. Are you with me so far? Does that follow that? Okay, I think I've got that. Okay, cool. Hold, save. Hold equals save. So this concept, even this little concept was a breakthrough for my family. And like, oh, we don't have to overthink this. Like, what % of our income do we need to do each of these things with? So it became very almost formulaic to say when we have, we know what we have to spend. So there's have to spend and want to spend. So yes, that gets broken down too. But after the have to spend stuff, we know how much money is left over, and we get to decide what buckets to put it in. And that's such a little thing provided so much clarity for us. Like, all right, well, let's play with 10% of that money to buy things that we want. My coffee budget, my coffee habit, for example. Let's save X number of percents and make sure that we're investing. For us, early on, it was as much as humanly possible. I think, I don't remember the exact numbers, but we were way over 50% of what was left over after housing and food, we invested. We did not do, early on, we did not do fancy things. Didn't go out to eat a lot. I was eating, I remember I worked for the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., the performing arts venue. And I ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for lunch every day. And I built a wall out of the empty Skippy containers. And there must have been, I don't know, 3 dozen empty Skippy containers that I'd stacked up. Because it was important to me to focus on that early. And it allowed us to do a lot of amazing things in our life. My wife says it's important to tell our story, so I'm going to do that. I always feel some hesitancy around it, but I'm going to break through that. I guess that's a limiting belief, that no one cares about me. So you heard the peanut butter and jelly story. We decided early on that real estate was our thing. This was long before I even dreamed of selling a house for someone. It was, we needed a home, and we started our home search process and had an amazing real estate agent, who's at Keller Williams now, who suggested that we look at multi-unit properties. Because we needed a house, we knew that was going to happen. But he suggested multi-unit properties as a way to check that box, as well as create a long-term investment. Early on, we had a renter that paid half of our mortgage, so we were allowed to live in a 3-bed, 1.5 bath, that looked like that, for what our 1-bedroom, 1-bath people were paying in rent. Like, we were paying about $1,500 a month to live in this place, and we were getting $1,500 from rental income to pay our $3,000 mortgage. Yes, prices were different back then. And yes, we put in sweat equity as well, because we realized that I had the appetite. I was 20, whatever I was, with hair. And could save a lot of money, and again, we knew what that meant. It meant that we could duplicate. We could do this again and again and again, and that's what we did. We moved 2 years after we bought this thing. This was in 2008. We bought a house literally around the corner on the same city block. Moved in a snowstorm, dragging our stuff on a sled. We were in Washington, D.C. at the time, which was a blast and a great story. But it allowed us to keep doing this house hacking concept. So that's house number 2 around the corner. Went on to house number 3 isn't on there. Went on to be able to do that again because when we left house number 1 and 2, they were producing cash flow. We were able to rent them, pay the bills, plus a little. And then the next one, rent, pay the bills, plus a little. And this snowballed. And so we're able to buy a house, a duplex in Oakland, rented 2 years later, moved out again. This top right one is our last Oakland duplex. So then we had 4 houses that were all doing what over time? Your real estate agents, what do houses do over time? Appreciating, yes. So not one house appreciating, we had 4 houses appreciating. And you know, those guys we bought for, those were both about at a $500,000 price point. So again, 2008 prices in the heart of DC. But over time, like that's a lot of real money. And so then we were able to decide when the time was right to dispose of those, sell them, and trade up into bigger and better things. So we went and we played around in Huntsville, Alabama for a while, investing in smaller multi-units, 4 to 10 unit buildings, and accumulated 20-something units until we had a tenant flood 3 of our units maliciously on her way out the day before the sheriff showed up. So that was like, oh, maybe we don't want to do this for the rest of our lives either. And then we discovered passive investing. So that's, we're able to invest as part of a group in much larger apartment complexes. All snowballing from that choice that we made at 23 or whatever. Yeah, 23. Back in 2008, you know how old I am. If you can do math. And yeah, so this has kept compounding. And then we realized that like I said there were only a few choices, and that is true. But when it comes to what to choose to invest in, it can kind of go crazy. So we've been playing around a lot. We're invested in ATMs. We did the Bitcoin thing. I bought a piece of art, a little piece of an art, because we can do all these things in the modern era with platforms that allow essentially crowdfunding of investments across classes that I didn't know existed, even recently. Like you can buy insurance contracts, for example, and invest in those. Now what we have learned over time, and this is one of those things that we were taught a long time ago and chose to not implement, is that the safest investments are the ones that you understand. Turns out I don't understand Bitcoin, and so those investments are not doing so well. ATMs are fine. So that was a big lesson learning for us. Is like, yeah.
What year did you buy Bitcoin?
So we bought it over time. The mistakes we made. You know what? Actually, maybe we're just unlucky. We invested in a Bitcoin mining fund, and had the manager, the general partner of that fund, essentially disappeared. He actually showed up in court yesterday. 2 days ago. So back on the radar. Yeah, he's in for a world of hurt. Not for me, unfortunately. I have no power, but he had other partners that actually have a real claim against him. Anyway, so that one might have been the lesson learned is maybe more around partnerships as opposed to Bitcoin itself. I guess the value of the Bitcoin it's okay. Hotels, you can invest in hotels. We've been doing that recently. Good cash flow assets. G2's got one for sale still. Yeah. So yeah.
We have 3.
3 hotels for sale. The point being, one house, snowballed, made the right choices, 8 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. We're always, one of the 6 personal perspectives, learning based. To accept our failures, cut our losses, and move on, and keep the money moving. So we'll talk about what that means and how you can implement that in your investing trajectory and world. So that is my story. That brings us mostly today. Oh, and private equity, yeah. So this is fun. This opens, we have a martini bar that's opening next week. That I'm an investor in Oakland, and that is so exciting. I will absolutely put out an invite at some point, not for opening night, but for some point in the future, or soft opening, I guess. Yeah,
What do you think about index funds?
Yeah.
Would that be?
That's an easy button. So we'll talk about some easy buttons as well. I didn't put my easy. I have some easy buttons that we invest in when I don't want to think about it, and there should be some of those because part of what I've learned, maybe more recently, or what I've listened to more recently, is keeping the money moving. So what can we do to make sure that we're maximizing our money? I realized that. There's a great class coming up, the Getting Unstuck class. I think it's 2 weeks from now with Chad Peavy here in this office. There was a time not too long ago where I felt very stuck money-wise, and I felt like I had to keep it safe, and I wanted it in my bank account. I wanted to see it, and I was afraid it was all gonna go away. And I broke through that, and I wish I could tell you exactly what it was. I think it was just kept being prodded by education and listening to people's stories. But what I realized is I was sitting on money that was earning nothing. My money's sitting in a bank account, 0.1% interest, I think. And there's so much better you can do and keep your money close at hand. Maybe not right there, but like pretty close. So we'll talk about that, and index funds as part of that as a liquid asset. Yes, it's up and down, volatile, potentially, but it's accessible, and there's some security in that. Yeah. Okay, any questions about my story? Hi.
Hi. No, I'm a little late. I was on Barker's tour.
Hey, good. That's where you should be. Okay, so money comes from two places. You either work for it or it works for you. Or, I guess there's some third and fourths with gifts and lotteries, but let's distill it down, our options into two. You can work for money or your money can work for you. So at the top of, and I had this chart up at the beginning. So you've got inbound money and outbound money. And we're going to talk about where we can make adjustments to maximize our financial returns. But really, before we can do any of that, we need to know why we're doing what we're doing, and get clear around what the goal is. And we're all in different phases of life. Like Steve's probably thinking about retirement soon, which is a very different mindset to someone who's starting their investing career and is going to be very focused on wealth accumulation. Steve's probably ready for some cash coming in, and maybe doesn't care so much about the long-term wealth buildup. So that's a big piece of the puzzle, is what is vital for you? And then backing up even further, why is it vital for you? What does the money actually do for you? I'm going to pause there. Does anyone want to share what money does for them and why it's important to take this journey?
It gives you freedom
What does freedom mean to you?
to do what you enjoy in life.
Okay. What do you enjoy in life?
Cars, gym, family.
Okay. Okay.
I would say money means that I mean, it's like having that financial independence. You're not working for anybody. You have enough that you can run your life the way you want. You're not stuck at a 5-to-9 job.
Mhm.
Like I mean, the quality of life just goes up, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that was really spot on with quality of life,
Yeah.
Yes.
right? Because instead of doing the 9 to 5, we can go on vacation and pick and choose pool time and pick and choose work time,
Yeah.
right? So that it is quote unquote flexible, but then also we're, working in Cabo.
Yeah.
But like that's okay.
Yeah.
I think money gives you time, time gives you freedom, or freedom gives you time. One of those.
Yes. Okay.
I think money for me is legacy building too,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you have the money, because you have the time, you're able to do things and impact people's lives.
Yeah.
I mean, that's number one.
So
Just to piggyback on
Yes,
that,
please.
I mean, if you have money, you can help the ones that do need it.
Mhm.
You're able to give to your community. I mean, think about what's happening around the world. I mean,
Mhm.
if we are not able to help with that, I mean, that's the biggest gift you can give. you know, it's charity.
Exactly, because it will enable you not only to give, but also to invest in those people. Because I see, for example, a lot of people coming from these third world countries and the southern border, they're not running away from political asylum. Really, no. Majority of them run away from poverty, depravity, and even shame. So if you have the capital, you know, or if those people have the capital, there's no way they can be coming to the southern border.
Yeah.
You don't see people from Singapore on the southern border.
Right.
Because they have the money. They come, they fly, they go to the airport, they fly over there.
Yeah.
People from France, they come over here, you know, and they stay for 6 months, they don't need a visa.
Yeah.
How poverty, right? So if I just had a portion of what these guys have, man, I change the world.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
So, yeah, okay.
I know, it's like he's saying all these great points, because I mean, think about it, I mean, the United States is a world of immigrants.
Yeah.
Whether you're from the European countries or different countries, and people have come here to build that wealth and build that better life,
Mhm.
and it comes to quality of life. Yeah.
Okay, so I hear quality of life, impact, freedom.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Generational wealth.
Yes.
Okay.
Really love that.
Oh, legacy, yes, legacy,
Legacy, sorry.
impact, yeah. No, that's, your word is fine. Well, yours is 2 words, mine's 1. Just kidding.
Also gives you security.
And security, okay, okay. Why is security important?
You know the bills are paid on time.
Mhm.
You don't have to stress about it, you know. You just pretty much
And-
you have a sense of security.
And that lack of stress allows what to happen?
That lack of stress.
When you get rid of the stress,
You can focus on the things you enjoy,
Yeah.
the things you want to do in life.
okay.
Your cash flow chart basically hits all those things.
Allows you
I
to
mean,
spend
there's-
more and-
I mean,
yeah.
I think it says it all.
Yeah.
Spend, hold, donate, invest.
It allows you to do all of
Yeah.
it, more, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, and that's, yes, I think that's it in a nutshell. It allows you to do life more, the money side of life, that is, which then allows you the freedom and allows you to make the choices to have the big impacts and build a legacy if that's important to you, or beach in Cabo, or pick a career of your choosing, potentially. I'm speaking to real estate agents, but you know, sometimes I speak to a mixed bag, and people aren't doing what they're passionate about. Money allows you to do what you're passionate about, or allows you the freedom to choose to do what you're passionate about.
I mean, that's true, a lot of people are working on job because it pays their bills.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, I run into so many healthcare workers, they're miserable, but it pays their bills.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think I have I'm going to be jumping around in my presentation. Yeah, there we go. The ability to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want. It's kind of it in a nutshell. So that's legacy, great. If it's beach in Cabo, family time, whatever it is. Yeah. That sums it up for me. Okay, so we know why it's important, what we're after, and I suggest getting super clear on that. It's like what it looks like when we think about security. Define it. How much money needs to be in the bank? How much do you need to come in every month? When you think about legacy, what does that mean? How much do you need, if it's handing generational wealth, how much? Or what impact does it need to have so that you can work backwards and define how much? Freedom, what does freedom mean and what does it cost?
Money.
It costs money, but how much?
And that is also defined differently too for each person.
Yes.
I mean, define happiness.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean,
I'm so happy that no one said happiness is what money will get them.
yeah.
I mean, it might lead to things that lead to happiness, sure.
Mhm.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate that from this group. But yes, it's absolutely true. Freedom for one person may be, you know, $1,000 a month living in Costa Rica. Like, that's it,
I was
right?
about to mention that. Yeah, you could live like a king in other countries, you don't need $1 million.
Right, right. And for others, it might require a private jet, for example. their vision, right? Which requires a different amount of money. Don't buy a private jet, guys. Charter one. Way cheaper over the long run. Okay, let's go back to the path of money. So we talked about the 4 choices that we get to make, and obviously we're going to spend some time over here because this is meant to be an investing class. So when we think about investing, what do we get to do with that? What are our choices when we invest? When you think of investing, what are you doing?
Crypto.
So you're buying.
So
That's, yeah.
you're putting, I mean, whether it's monetary or whatever it is, you're investing into something that you think will create something big, right? So, I mean, stocks is one, of course. I'm trying to think of a better definition here without going into the stocks and buying things.
Yeah,
It's not.
well, it sounds like you are putting money in expecting a return,
Yes.
kind of in short.
Yeah.
Okay, and we can do that so there's 2 big buckets, right? We can buy something, so your crypto, your index funds, your real estate, your art, whatever, businesses, or you can lend. So take your money, lend it to someone else with the expectation that they pay you back with interest. So when we think about our choices for investing, that's where we get to start. And not to say you have to choose one or the other, but it's the first decision point. When you have money to invest, are you going to buy something and own it, or are you going to lend it? So, and that helps break down your choices. That's the point of going through this exercise. And when you choose one or the other, you can choose to do it passively or actively. And passive is as simple as, well, it says it there, they control it, meaning you have someone else is controlling what happens with the money, and you're still getting a return. And there's a list there, but that's where your index funds come in hand. Like you're not sitting on the board of Apple or whatever making decisions for the company. It is a passive investment. And with an index fund, you're not even choosing to invest in Apple. So someone's choosing that for you. Whereas on the active side, it's a lot of real estate can be active. Like when you go out and buy an investment property, even if you don't manage it and you hire a property manager, you're still likely being the asset manager. You're still doing work. It is still active. So this is our first decision point. Are you willing to put in work, or do you just want to place money and forget about it? And these are kind of the big buckets of options. Has anyone done any of these that they want to share their experience with?
Mostly stocks.
Mostly stocks, yeah. Okay.
I mean, I started to get into stocks during the pandemic. Thought I made some smart moves. Then after the years, I should have pulled out when I should have. And it went down. So, I mean, when it comes to stocks, I think you just know when to time it. When you instead of waiting thinking, oh bro, like there's a plateau, we really have to be. I think that's a learning curve for me, is keeping yourself updated and with the news and everything. But yeah.
Well, that brings in a great point around timing, and to Abu's point earlier about liquidity, like how close does that money need to be to you? How quickly do you need to be able to access it? Because when you're looking at stocks or index funds, or REITs even, while it's very accessible money, you can sell it at any time, it's also volatile, meaning you may want to choose to time when you sell. And as you experience, sometimes the value is down and it's not a great time to sell.
And another thing is like, you do make profit and you decide to sell, but then the stocks go even higher. You want to kick yourself and why did I pull out early?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it again, time varies.
Right, and that's where a knowing of yourself also comes into play. Some of us are going to choose to be obsessive over stock prices, and some of us are great at buying it and knowing it's a super long term and just forgetting about it. It doesn't even matter that the value's down or up or whatever. Until you need it, it's irrelevant. And same with, I think Steve's mentioned this before, same with real estate. Like a seller, an owner of a property, it only matters when they're buying, selling, or refinancing. That's the only points where the value of their house truly matters, besides the ego boost or whatever. Yeah. And of course, that's a spectrum as far as the obsessiveness goes. I've actually been both too. Sometimes I'm looking at it every day, and sometimes I can set it and forget it.
That's best advice a friend gave me. Buy and forget it.
Yeah.
And that's it. Look back when you need it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, or if you read news that makes you think about it and wants to know if it's right, like sure, do the research, but also be satisfied with whatever your decision is. When you sell, it's sold.
And never bet your bread and butter money.
Mm-hmm.
It's the extra that you have that you don't mind losing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I guess that's a good place to, so if we go back to this, like, it's important to understand what has to happen. Actually, I'm going to go with all three. Has to happen in those three categories. So that if this goes bad, you're okay. You've still got your bases covered. So yes, don't invest your savings if there's any possibility that you'll need those savings, for example. Yeah. And also, well, we can talk more about this, but every investment has a risk to it, which is usually inversely related to reward. No, that's the same. So high risk, high reward tends to be how it works. Low risk, low reward. That is not an inverse relationship, right? Am I remembering my statistics right? I'm imagining it on a graph. They both go up together, so not inverse. Anyway.
Directly proportional.
Directly proportional, thank you. Thank you. MBA came in handy there. So that's something to keep in mind too. Like, yeah, you're gonna come across investments that are promising or suggesting that you might see a 20% return year over year. Well, okay, that's a lot. So what's the risk? Not to say it's impossible. Like, a 20% return in a year is absolutely doable. Ron's getting 20% in 2 months or something on a flip he's doing. Like, they're out there, but he's also taking on a lot of risk by doing it. So to keep that in mind too as you see big returns. And then low returns, like what are the safer ones on that list?
There's nothing safe investment. Every
I would say
investment is
There's
CDs.
some fairly safe stuff
CDs are
though.
safe.
CDs and T-bills
Yeah.
tend to
Okay.
be, what's that?
private lending maybe.
Well, that one seems,
No?
well, because,
Depends who you lend
and
to.
I want to touch on that in just a second. But yeah, I would say CDs and T-bills tend to be pretty safe. T-bills have a very long history of paying out.
Even
And-
short-term treasuries too.
Yeah, and short terms paying more than
Yeah,
your bank
the
will.
rates up, yeah,
Yeah.
we're doing pretty well.
Yep. I just checked last night, 5.29-ish.
Yeah.
That's higher.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. Though I told you the story about getting 0.1%. My new bank is paying 5%, so it's like,
Yeah, I mean.
it's right there.
I mean, even higher than, I think people are still getting CDs at 1 point something because
Yeah.
banks don't give you savings, don't give you anything.
Yep.
Might as well
They want
invest
your,
in CDs.
banks want your money right now, so they're enticing people to bring new money in.
Yeah.
Right.
They'll pay well.
Yep, and banks make money on the spread, and that spread is super tiny right now. The spread between what they're paying you and what someone is paying them whenever they loan your money.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, so I would say CDs, T-bills, fairly safe. Low return, 5% is not bad, but historically low return. 2 years ago, that was, what, 1-ish%. CDs were probably 2-ish, anyway.
There was a time when it was 11% on CDs.
Sure, yeah.
During my parents' time when
Oh,
they
yeah,
were,
they-
yeah.
Right. Well, and the other thing to consider is like it's typically tied to inflation. So if T-bills are paying 5%, it's because your money is becoming worth less. Not worthless, worth less. And so you need to be at least 5% to keep up with inflation. Yeah. Private lending, you said was safe. I would say it can be, but it's also, the reason that I view it as risky is when you're doing it yourself, you tend to be lending on a specific project or a specific person, and that's a point of failure.
Yeah.
That project goes bad or that partnership goes bad, and all that egg was in one basket. One egg, one basket. That's my
When I
perspective.
first got into real estate, there were several real estate brokers / agents in town who had done well and were heavy, and they were the go-to people for private seconds.
Mhm.
And they did, you know, they did very well. Even my broker did private seconds. Now, they had a process, they do an approval and so forth. And they, and when rates got high, I mean, they would fill that gap, and do 5 or 10% seconds.
Yeah.
And they were, they were getting good returns. The rates were high, and they were doing well. But on the flip side, I've seen people in that world lend money to people that they're not even doing their due diligence to determine, how much equity is in the property and what. I can tell you some stories of stuff that I look at pre's and it's like, why are they lending this person, like $250,000 or $300,000 when they're like, their interest is like a 12th or a 13th in line.
Yep.
It's like, did you even run a pre and see what's already, just absolutely crazy stuff. But it can, if you understand real estate and you know how to determine what properties are worth and determine equity positions, and you can do well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
One other quick thing, I think that's coming more and more in play on the passive ownership side is the DST, the Delaware Statutory Trust. That's starting to get more and more traction. They're not that flexible, but they are becoming, and they're a good backstop in a 1031 exchange situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I view that under the syndication category.
Yeah.
They could be considered separate,
Yeah.
but DSTs are 1031able, which makes them hugely valuable. So when you have an active investor who's trying to get out of being an active owner, it's a great option for them to move their money. And
Yeah, and there are CPAs that don't know about them.
yeah,
And I've had clients where their CPA did not advise them to even consider a DST, and they went ahead and paid the taxes.
yeah,
And they couldn't identify, they couldn't purchase a replacement property, and they took the hit. I said, did they mention a DST to you? No.
yeah.
It's terrible.
And it's becoming more accessible now too, the
Yeah.
DSTs. It used to be, the syndications and DSTs used to be country club investments. Like you had to know somebody and they had to be well off because that's the world that operated in. Whereas now it's much more accessible
Oh, yeah.
to everyone. And the fact that you can 1031 is amazing.
Yeah, you can't 1031 a REIT. You can't,
Right.
REITs aren't eligible with the DST.
Right. And that's because you guys are real estate agents. Why is that? What needs to happen when you're 1031ing from one property to another? What needs to happen with title? Or the name on title? It has to be the same.
It has to be the same.
So when you're investing in an entity, it's not 1031able unless you were selling in the same entity. So a syndication can 1031 into a new syndication because that's the entity that is investing. But when it's a human selling a property, it's got to be that human on title, which a DST allows for. Okay, so what happens after you do all the investing? You get returns, hopefully. And then what happens with those returns? We get to make the same exact choices. And this is a place I've been stuck before too, is I don't keep track of the returns. So they just accumulate and they're sitting in cash at 0%. We're back at the same problem. That stuckness I was talking about. So keep an eye on it and make sure that you're following the same flow. And you may choose to not invest it. You may choose to spend it or add it to your savings account. Just make the choice intentionally, purposefully. E to P was our theme for today.
When is cash is best?
When is what?
When is cash best?
Like having cash?
Yeah.
So I think there's a few times. One is cash as reserves, so that you can support yourself in times of need, crisis, life happens.
Unforeseen emergencies,
Yeah. And second is so that you have it available for opportunity. And so having more cash available when, especially on the decline in an economic environment or a sector is declining, is pretty awesome because there are sellers that are desperate to sell and you can buy assets at a discount. regardless of class. Yeah. So bad markets are when you want more cash.
Yeah, you want cash or an equivalent to cash.
Yes.
For liquidity, like a HELOC or a reverse mortgage
Mhm.
HELOC, so for opportunity,
Yep.
emergencies and so forth. That's why you want it. 'Cause remember, and as you get old, and the reverse mortgage is attractive, because as you get older, it's harder to get a HELOC, it's harder to get, most people are, equity rich and cash poor. They've got the equity, but it's, as you get older, it's harder to get that equity out. HELOCs are not easy to qualify for seniors.
Yeah.
Because they calculate the payment as worst case scenario,
Yeah.
not the start rate. And,
Yeah.
and reverse mortgages are starting to become more and more popular just for purposes of having that HELOC in place. You don't borrow against it, but if you ever have a need for quick cash, boom, it's there to use.
Yep.
And that's starting to get a lot of traction too.
Yeah. Reverse mortgages have a bad reputation.
They start out with a bad rep, but
Yeah,
they're
not.
I mean, they're
They don't
FHA
have to be
insured.
bad.
They're FHA insured, but you gotta watch the rates and the upfront fees, they're not all uniform in that respect.
Mhm.
But, yeah, they're becoming more and more popular as part of an estate plan for seniors.
Yeah. It's usually the children that think they're terrible though, because it's eating into their equity, their future equity. But for the seniors living there, like it's income.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to remember, real estate agents, seniors can use a reverse mortgage to purchase a principal residence. Basically, the lenders will lend about 48% of the purchase price. And it has a line of credit that increases annually as you get older. You can access more money as you get older under a reverse mortgage, because they know the due date's coming sooner.
It's a nice way to say that.
Again, that's something that's not well known amongst a lot of people, is the ability to use a reverse mortgage to a senior to purchase. They don't need 100% of the price, they only need about 52% of the price.
And they don't need income.
They don't need, all they gotta show is the ability to pay tax and insurance.
Yep.
That's it.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Cool. So I added some arrows here. Oh, and I added taxes as our evil fifth option to spend money on. So in my view, is like, what do we do to maximize the direction of the arrow? What can we do to make sure that our human capital that's us working, is getting the biggest returns possible? You guys run your own business, so you're doing pretty well. You've got control over that. Whether or not it's going well is a different story, but you've got the control to make as much money as probably as you can imagine. Less spending, we talked a little bit about that. Where are you spending that you really don't need to be? We make a lot of choices. Some of our choices, though, we can unmake. What are you drinking?
You
Coffee?
mentioned it already.
My husband's like that.
I've seen
Do you
people-
really need it?
I've been associated with people that are laid off, aren't working, and every time I see them, they got a $5 Starbucks in their hand. And I'm going, what's wrong with this picture? Why are you buying Starbucks? You're not even employed right now.
Yeah.
With 2 children in private school. It just
Yeah.
doesn't make, they're not thinking about the big picture.
And my hope is that we can be purposeful about that spending. So I'm not saying that your coffee habit is the wrong habit, for example.
This is chocolate.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Your chocolate habit is a bad one for you.
It's
Maybe
almost the same price.
Right. And maybe it is for
I
others.
made this, I didn't buy it.
But when we make these choices with intention and with purposefulness, we can feel good about it. But the question is, when we're making the choice, is it an impulse, or have we considered our options? And as long as we consider our options and we still say, you know what, I'm gonna buy that second $5 coffee for the day, which I might after this class, with intention. I know I could take that $5 and stick it in an index fund, and it can grow for me. And that does add up over time. I'll actually share a link to a calculator that can show what a cup of coffee removed from your budget can compound to over time.
Sure.
It's scary, guys. And then invest. How do we? Oh, what's that?
Even if any compounded over.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
was a time, I mean, as a little kid, you know, you would collect all these coins that your parents would have left over
Yeah.
in your piggy bank.
Oh, yeah.
Over time, you're like, oh my God, I have like 20, 30 bucks right here.
Yeah.
At the end, and it's something. That teaches, I mean, I don't know about now. I got a piggy bank for my kids, but, you know.
Right.
that's-
How do you get
I think
coins?
piggy banks are going away.
We gotta go to the bank and get pennies. Can't remember the last time I spent a penny. I see them in the house though, so they're around. They're coming from somewhere. Okay, and then increasing investing. So how do we make that that happen purposefully? And the easiest way is to spend less and invest it instead. So it's kind of back to that idea of spending with intention. And that different methods work for different people, so I'm not one to preach budgets or whatever. There's a lot of methods out there. Just start with intention. And how much can we realign? How many subscriptions are you signed up for that you don't need?
All of them.
All, I was gonna say too, all of them.
The
Just one,
budget,
okay.
you know, the budget is in most cases, is the missing piece.
Yeah, yeah.
It-
And I said what I
having
said
one
though,
and
because,
trying to stick to it is for most people is the missing piece.
yes.
It just, you spend it because you have it, and you don't,
Yep.
you don't budget first, set aside for the others.
Right. I framed it that way because budgets for some people that is a huge leap. There's a limiting belief in there that they need to break through. So that's not what this class is about, so I don't want to spend the time to try to break through that limiting belief. Let's just start with spending with intention and work towards making a budget. One little step at a time. Okay, and then spend less in taxes. Why is spending less in taxes important?
It's really
Because you
important.
end up having more money in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Compounding over time.
why do you want to give your hard-earned money so much? You know, I mean, taxes are used for other things. That's there, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting, I know you have a great point here, but I go back to the Starbucks thought. Like, well, we choose to buy a $5 cup of coffee at Starbucks when we could go elsewhere and get a $3 cup of coffee. Or there's a place in Berkeley that sells it for 75 cents.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Star Grocery. I just learned last night. So we're still making that, we're choosing to pay this giant brand money that.
Yeah, they've created almost an addiction
Yeah.
amongst a group of people.
Yeah.
It's just,
So I guess I want to dig deeper. Like, sure, we say we want to spend less, but we still choose Starbucks. So tell me more. Let's dig a little deeper.
I would say for people who have a hard time not spending for Starbucks, just raise their income somehow. More money.
well, yeah, well,
That is
well,
true,
that's
actually.
that's the thing in our business is, you know, my wife and I have this discussion there from time to time when it comes to buying something and depending on what it is and whether to do it or not. You know, and she doesn't work and you know, she'll get really frugal at times, and I'll just say, no, we can afford that. You go ahead and buy that. Because I know what's going on in my business. I know I'm gonna make that money. I'm gonna replace that money,
Mhm.
you know, and she worries more than I do, and it's like, but that's a good way to be. But at the same time, I can say, yeah, go ahead, buy that. You know, don't worry about it. You know, we're still saving, we're still investing, we're still doing all the other stuff we're supposed to do. But, you know, we've got to somewhat handle it on the big picture. But the problem is most people, what do? They use this.
Mhm.
They don't have the cash and they use this. That's the elephant in the
And then
room.
you
Yeah.
get the bill.
And we've made this too easy, we've made this too accessible to everyone.
Yep.
I mean, they're actually giving it to kids now.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
when I was in college, I think it was my freshman year, Bank of America sends in this, where you get a credit card. I think it was only like $100 limit. I'm going
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
I think it was like $100 limit, but that was a lot of money. It's like, I don't even have a job. I'm going to school. It's got a credit card.
Yeah.
This is cool. You know,
Yeah, we had the
they
booths
get to you
set up.
early. They get to you early
Yep.
and get you started on it.
First day of school, you're walking past all the booths of the credit
Exactly.
card companies. Yeah, I don't know if they still do that, but
Wow.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll get to debts as well, and how that can, I guess, okay, I have a thought for next time I teach this class, talking more about
This
that.
one, I want to finish that point is, I was talking about us, being in a self-employed, having the ability, to do what's necessary to make more money.
Yeah.
But many people are on, they're on a wage or a salary. They only have so much upside.
Yep.
Okay. And that's where you can get in trouble, where you don't have the ability to replace that money you spent.
Yep.
If you really can't afford it,
Yeah.
if it falls outside your budget.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we're discussing here about is like what Steve is talking about and what I was talking earlier. It's the mindset of the family units. So
Mhm.
if the wife is like, I'm gonna go spend much as I can, and there's husband saying, well, we have limited income, or we have limited deals coming in, and then there's the other side of society we live in where they have to go to Starbucks first thing in the morning because
Mhm.
sort of show to a friend they have a Starbucks. So that's another element in society where people are trying to live up to the neighbors or to their friends' standards.
It's
I have some
common.
personal friends where they have medical background, they make, $3 to $4 million a year. They can do many vacations, but when you have certain business models, you cannot keep doing that. And before you know it catches up. And the last thing I think, what you just touched earlier, a lot of people go in debt without realizing they're in debt.
Right.
Personally, I don't want to display my personal opinion, but I generally don't use a credit card.
Yeah.
As a family, we don't use credit cards. We pay what we can afford and that's it. And that, I've seen many friends that think, oh, I'm gonna pay it off next month, then I'll pay it off next year. Oh, it's free interest for 6 months. Don't ever get into that trap.
Yeah.
Because those interest rates for 6 months, if you look in detail, APR is 25%.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's crazy.
APR is 32%.
Very high, yeah.
That's 32% interest rate,
Yeah.
But if you're smart, you
There's
would
other
watch
cos-
it and then just pay it off before it
Well, you
starts.
pay it
This
off
is the
every-
problem.
pay it off every month.
You don't have the money in the first place, and that's why you spend
You gotta
it.
be able to-
Yeah.
you gotta
What
pay it
makes you
off.
have
think
to-
in 6 months down the road, what is the assurance that you have
Yep.
that your situation will change, unless you've done something drastically different?
Yeah.
That's the key people miss. I've seen so many friends go in debts just because of this
Mhm.
gimmick that
Oh,
they
sure.
throw at you.
Yeah. It's
And
too
when
easy.
you talk about MBA, one of the first lesson I learned in my MBA class, if you want to get rich, get a security for $250,000 US and open a credit card company. And give that credit card company to people. It's the fastest way to get rich in this country. Open a credit card company and any one of us can open one. And just give it up.
Scary.
It's scary, but that's how you make money.
Sorry, before Abu, did you have a thought? You were-
No, it was just to piggyback on
Okay.
that, but we're kind of going to credit cards and
Yeah.
that now.
It's
But,
debt. This is what people don't realize, that we only have certain
Yeah.
level of income.
Yeah.
There's so many things out there that can get you into a debt. A car, a loan, a
Guys,
house.
I brought that.
Credit card is the worst one, and it's so easy to get.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a pervasive problem right now with the inflation, and cost of living.
Here, have a bunch of
Insurance,
donuts.
a lot
Smells so
here.
good.
But you can
Credit card
actually
debt
use
is
a credit card
off
to your
the charts,
advantage
and
too.
defaults are-
Yes, you
At the
can.
same
You can,
time.
you have to be very careful.
Yeah.
The problem is, as much as a gimmick the system is, credit runs the country. So how do you build credit without using that gimmick?
Yeah, well, I think it was you two maybe making the point that if you are able to use a credit card and keep track of it and pay it, like that's the way to go.
Yeah, I have a business card, I have cards that, accumulate points.
Yep.
And
Well, you can use-
I run everything I can conceivably pay on a credit card, I use to accumulate points. It's
Yeah.
massive amounts of points.
But knowing you're going to
Yeah.
pay it at the end of the month.
And every time, and I'm talking like, 5-figure bills that I pay off monthly,
Mhm.
every 2 or 3 months, they keep increasing my credit limit.
Mhm.
Higher and higher and higher, because I'm making these huge payments. They're trying to entice me to
Yeah.
Spend more than you
buy a
do.
car on the credit card,
Buy a
do
car.
something. They
That's
just keep raising. It's like, it's just crazy.
Many
the way
years
that
ago,
industry works.
many years ago, I saw this episode of Dr. Phil. This guy was ridden in debt, credit card bills and everything, and he was still buying. I'm like,
Yeah.
Crazy.
yeah.
Yeah. Donuts. I forgot. I brought donuts. Help yourself. Or we can pass them around, whatever's easiest. I stopped because I wanted the smell of donuts in my car. I saw the sign, like, oh, that would smell good. Anyway, there they are.
You buy those every day? No, I'm just
No, so it's in Hayward, I think, Tommy's Donuts. Cute old-fashioned looking building. So I don't know that we got to the punchline of how to pay less in tax. Or even why we want to pay less in tax. We're happy to give Starbucks extra money when we don't need to. Why not give the government extra money when we don't need to? Just curious, what's the difference?
When you give taxes, depending how much you make, you give a good amount,
You
compared
give
to
more?
$5.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's
But,
fair.
I don't know why we have that mindset, actually.
Yeah, I think
Me neither, that's why I asked, I don't
I
have
think
an
it's
answer.
important to give tax personally, because, you know, some of the things that we value, like Abu mentioned earlier, you can go and live in some third world country for $500 a month,
Mhm.
but you don't have the security, you don't have the transportation, you don't have the healthcare, you don't have the, I keep saying security. Security is one of the big things in our life that we don't realize.
Mhm.
You don't have the services like fire, you don't have the service from the ambulance service, the hospital easily accessible. So some of the money that we pay in taxes, they build this infrastructure for us. You know, the fact we live in Fremont, you just go to Lake Elizabeth this morning, I went for a walk with my daughter, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You don't get that in some countries. You go for that time of the morning, you probably get robbed. And nobody asks you a question, what happened?
Yeah.
You know, so I think, yeah, we all try to minimize our taxes, but I honestly still believe that still this element of us should contribute, otherwise society won't run the way it's running. I have some people get upset with me for
I
saying
think
that.
most
I'm
people are
on board.
willing to pay their fair share,
Yeah,
but at the same time, you know, if the government's providing different incentives, you know, or different write-offs for certain expenditures, well, then, you know, to the extent you take advantage of it,
Yeah.
you know, you
Well, that's good.
realize the tax savings from that.
sure.
Okay. And because they're there, you want to try to maximize that savings as much as you can, because if you either give it to them or you keep it, and it's, you know, are you entitled to it or not? If you're entitled to it, you try to keep it.
Yes. That's so well said. It's like we're not talking about skirting law or
No. Right.
morality or anything. We've been given these ways to pay less in tax. It's like having coupons to Starbucks and choosing not to use them.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
We want to use our coupons.
Sure.
Get the
We're giving you coupons and still buying, but
Sure,
forgot
sure.
them, you know?
Right, right. So yeah, I'm with Steve 100%. Like if it's there for me, it's there for a
Go
reason.
utilize, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and often it's for sometimes what do they call, I almost remember my politics class, pork legislation, is that right? Anyway. Pork barrel, okay, where there's maybe tax incentives that aren't actually serving the greater good, but mostly, like, the government wants us to invest in real estate, and they give us tax breaks to do so. I can get behind that. And that's why, one of the great first steps in investing and lowering your overall long-term tax bill is through real estate investment. Yeah. Yep. Because many people don't know this, even realtors, so I'll just say it nice and clearly. When you invest in real estate, so we're not talking about primary residence, investments, the write-offs that you get are crazy. You get to write off every penny of interest, not only up to $750,000 in mortgage. You get to write off your PMI if you're paying PMI. Your utilities, your maintenance, your repairs, you get to take the value of the building and write it off over time, usually 27 and a half years for residential. So if the building is worth $1 million a year, oh man, can't do that math. If the building is worth $2.7 million a year, you're writing off $100,000 a year. Did I do that math right? Yes. Okay. $100,000 a year for a $2.7 million real estate asset of a deduction that's against your income. And potentially, talk to your CPA, you might be able to take that deduction and apply it to your active real estate income as well, depending on what you're doing. Call probably qualifies for the what do they call it? Real estate professional exemption. Yeah, my wife does as well. It's pretty powerful. So yeah, talk to your CPA. Have that planning conversation around, I'm a real estate professional, I own a business, what can I do to lower my tax burden? Simplest thing we can all do if we're selling houses is do an S corp, again, or an S election, I should say. Talk to your CPA about what that means and what it takes and how much it can save you, but there is generally big savings there. Anyone want to talk? You did it recently, right? Okay.
Yeah, because when I looked at my tax bills, I gotta do something to save, yeah.
Yeah.
You've had more coupons.
You said just an S corp, or was I missed it?
S corp or S election. So when S election is an option for most LLCs. It's essentially telling the federal government that you want the entity, so your LLC or your S corp, treated as taking this S election, which provides for certain ways that income is handled. The big one for essentially self-employed people is that you avoid a lot of the self-employment and Social Security and Medicare taxes.
Yeah.
And
You get to, the laws changed in 2019, which allow you can have the corporation pay your state income tax.
Yeah.
And so you get the full benefit of 100% of the state tax savings on 100% of the state income tax,
Oh.
not just the salt $10,000 limit
Yep.
that's in place right now. That's
Yeah.
that's the other savings.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
And your audit risk goes way down as a self-employed people with Schedule C, is that right?
Yeah.
They tend to get audited at a higher rate than people that have corporations that take an S election. So there's that too, a little bit of peace of mind.
Yeah, I know someone that got audited in our industry that got audited at least 3 times that I know of in, well, less than 20 years or less than 15 years. Got audited at least through
Yeah.
Schedule C.
Yep. So there's a reason to do it as well.
Not fun.
Yeah.
Make sure you have your receipts.
Oh.
So
There's a-
LLC doesn't really have that much of a protection.
It can, so that's the S election that you can choose to take with
As
an
an LLC
LLC.
or S corporation?
S corp, it's by default. If you're an S
Yeah.
corp, you have the S thingy.
Okay, so
Um,
if you're an LLC, can I incorporate
You
that?
can take
Oh.
it, talk to your CPA. It's
Yeah,
a
if you're an S
form.
election,
You might be
it's
doing it
LLC.
already.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Yeah. But otherwise,
So I have an
LLC.
LLC, not an
Okay,
S corp.
yeah.
My business, real estate.
My CPA says that if you have net profit of at least $60,000, then you should have set up an S corp.
Yep. And I think mine
And then
told me.
remember, all your commissions run through the S corp.
Right.
That comes back to you.
Yep.
What are the downsides of it?
What's that?
It costs a little money to incorporate.
Yeah, you're looking at about $2,500 to $3,000 in attorney's fees for formation of the corporation. You gotta pay an annual $800 fee to the state of California. You've got another $1,000 pass-through entity tax. Yeah, there's a few costs, but the savings will typically outdo the expenses.
Yep.
Again, it depends on how much you pay.
Yep. Yep.
Well, but I think some uncertainty, but I mean, I registered all these registers myself, it didn't take much of that. But there's a lot of standard templates out there that you can register.
Yeah, if you want,
But it's
if you wanna go
$800
that
a
route,
year,
I don't,
okay,
as an
that's
attorney,
fine.
I don't recommend it.
Oh, I see.
I can tell you so many horror stories of people trying to use LegalZoom and doing stuff. I mean,
Right.
it's just,
I see.
it's not worth the.
Yeah.
Unless you really understand the law.
Yep.
You
And
should, I'm an attorney, I would not,
Okay.
I'm not gonna try to set up my escrow, I'm paying someone
Fair
else
enough.
to specialize that and take care of it.
and I guess just to
That's fair.
push that point a little harder, I've learned, like, just because the form is available on a template does not make it a valid anything.
Oh, no.
Fair.
Even on LegalZoom.
In my world, you can believe all the do-it-yourself issues that I run across. I mean, I got one set on my desk right now, they're copying their uncle's trust and creating the trust, because this person's just really frugal and doesn't want to spend the money, you know, it's like, well, but she's still got to transfer them into the trust. Well, and she was gonna try to do the deeds herself, she had no clue what she did.
Oh, boy.
And then I run the titles and I go, she doesn't even know this yet, I said, you don't even hold titles to the one house. All you did was record an affidavit of death, you never did transfer it to yourself
Oh, boy.
as the beneficiary of the trust, it's still in your dad's trust. She doesn't even know that yet.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, ask for help.
Oh, yeah.
That's the lesson here.
Yeah,
Pay the $800.
And pay the
$800 is
$800.
fixed.
My contractor's dad did a complete estate plan on LegalZoom. He never funded the trust.
Yeah. So he had-
Nothing got put in the trust, the house, the bank, nothing got put in the trust. All he did was the paperwork. I'm sure LegalZoom had a cover sheet telling him what
Sure.
to do, but he didn't
He didn't
read it.
follow through.
Didn't
Yeah.
follow it.
Yeah. Yep. And even if you work with an attorney, they're going to give you the same instruction. You still have to do the work. And there was something that we forgot to put in our trust for a very long time, and I found it. That's probably a year or two ago. But like,
Yeah.
oh, let's do that. Oh my. Shoot, where was I going? No one's going to eat a donut. Only 2 donut takers.
Sorry?
Do you
Mm.
still like do?
I do a little
estate
estate
planning?
planning.
There's donuts, guys.
Mainly with this client's close friends and so forth. I don't try to.
Okay. We were on a track. Where were we? Oh, we were talking about taxes. I had one more point. I'm remembering where my head was. Retirement is another piece. This is not an S corp thing. This is for anyone who's self-employed. As a self-employed person, there's some great retirement plan options that allow you to put a lot of pre-tax money away. I don't know what the limits are right now. I want to say it's like $64,000, up to, depending on your income. That can be put away pre-tax, which means it's a deduction. It lowers your taxable income, paying less in tax, and you get a tax-deferred growth investment.
The
And-
defined benefit plan could be even higher.
The defined benefit, yeah. I'm in a, I had an employee for a while, so I had to go to 401k rep. I am my own plan administrator. Whew, it's not fun, but I can do anything with the money. I have a checkbook. Well, not anything. Can't, there are things, anyway. I have a checkbook, so I can invest in whatever I want that is legal to invest in as part of an IRA. And theoretically, my limits are really high, except as long as I have an employee, I have to match, and so there's some downside there. Cool. Okay. Well, let's move on and kind of look at, well, any more thoughts, questions?
Just make a note, just to add to public service now, that if you make profit 300,000 or more, talk to your CPA about a defined benefit plan.
Divine?
Defined
Defined.
benefit plan. Basically, it's a pension plan
Yep.
that will reap you much more tax savings than an IRA.
Yep. And everyone has, regardless of.
And it doesn't matter, you don't have to be an S corp
Yeah.
to do that.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. These retirement plans have nothing to do with, generally speaking, have nothing to do with how you choose to incorporate. And there's a lot available. And that's probably on the traditional side or the pre-tax side. You have some post-tax options as well with the Roth. So if you're under the Roth limits, there's an option to max out your Roth IRA limit.
Yeah, Roth limit's about 253, I think, something like
I
that.
thought the income limits for single people.
Well, for single, but married,
Yeah, like
married,
half
I
it.
think it's about
Oh, okay.
I think it's about, anything over about 253, you're not eligible for that.
Right.
for the Roth.
So I know growing up, that was what my dad always told me. Max out your Roth first, as long as you're able. And back then it was like $4,500, I think, and now we're up to $9K a year. I think we get to contribute. Which is-
7,000.
It's 7.
7,000 for single. yeah.
Okay. Yeah, which is that adds up over time. So it's tax
Consider paying
deferred.
your kids to do work for you too.
Yeah.
That's another.
That's right. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Have you done that?
I have taught it to agents do. I did not do it with my son. I just wasn't totally aware of it. But
Yeah.
Yeah, you can, generally they say at age 7 and up, then, you can hire your child to do work for you. You can be a model, pose in pictures. You can do the modeling, they can be a baby,
Mhm.
be young. Basically, the concept is they can do anything that, stuff envelopes, drop stuff on the doors, whatever, and you can pay them up to the standard deduction amount, and then they'll have zero tax. And from that amount, say standard deduction's at about, just call it 12.5, I think it's about 13.2 now, I think it is. But then they can put 7,000 in a Roth IRA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. not paying any tax, and you start doing that every year. Start a child at age 7 and do that every year until they're 23 or whatever, and you're setting them up
That's
very
legacy,
well.
yeah.
Very well.
Yep. And that 12.5 or 3.2 or whatever, $13,000 is a write-off. It's an expense
It's a
for your
write-off for
business.
you. It's a business expense for you.
So that's essentially
You
zero
have to
tax.
track
on that
the
one.
hours, it's all gotta be above board, you gotta track hours and all that. The work's gotta be suitable for their age, but it's gotta be something that would be a normal customary expense in the business that you're in, and so forth.
Yeah. How we doing on time? Okay, cool. 12:12. I was just telling someone, I keep seeing repeating numbers every time I look at my clock. Good luck, I'm told. And a precipitator of change? Anyway. So, all right, let's move on a little bit and pause here for a second and talk about where we are and where we need to be. This is the idea here is, how do you know how to get to where you want to be if you don't know where you are? So there's 2 steps to this process. We talked a little bit about where we want to be with security or legacy or whatever, and talked about how to get to a dollar amount there. And that's great, but if we don't know where we are, we don't know which direction that is. So how do we know where we are? What's that? Look at your bank account as part of it. Is that going to show you how much credit card debt you have?
Well, look at your overall. Yes.
Okay.
Make an assessment of yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what you start.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I have a slide for that. Yeah, where you are is your current situation, your current snapshot in time. One metric is a net worth. You might also want to look at the cash flow change over time. But the easy one to start with is, where are you today? It's how much you have, money, assets, how much you owe, your liabilities, subtract them, and you get a net worth. And there's no judgment on this number. Like, it might be super scary for some people, it might be really exciting for some people, but there's no judgment here. This is just where you are. It is the truth of your situation. So regardless of good, bad, ugly, it's an imperative to make steps and make change to get to where you want to go. So here's a little example of, these are all assets. So as you're looking through and calculating your net worth, these might be some of the things. I have other, so that kind of covers everything else. Some of the assets that you might hold, some amount of cash. Again, it might be a giant number, it might be a tiny number, doesn't matter, write it down. You might have some investments, add them all up. If they're held in a brokerage account, that's an easy number to find. If they're real estate, you might have to do a quick valuation on them. Businesses are fun to value as well, and then other things like like my art that I have, for example, is another a thing that's, we got to apply some value to it so that we can.
Who's the artist?
That was oh my goodness, Jean Baptiste, is that right? Famous dude. I own that much of it. It's like a $30 million painting. Yeah, it's fun. Here's it broken down even more. Don't forget anything. Oh, real estate. I'm sorry, automobile. Automobile is something that you own. It is worth something. It might happen to be worth less than you owe on it, but it's worth something. So add it to your asset column. You might have some valuable jewelry or a first edition Harry Potter or a baseball card that's worth something. Write them down.
Or an old Bugatti.
Or what?
Old Bugatti.
Yeah, absolutely. Notes receivable, so money that you've lent out as well.
Hey, Joe, I would like to add something.
Sure.
Intellectual capital,
Aha.
right? Because a lot of us have a ton of experience. Like Steve Dobar, he's a lawyer, right?
Mhm.
You know. So imagine this right now. We have the biggest landscape is what? In the internet. And so you can really teach what you have learned, your mistakes, all those things you have to involve in here.
Yeah,
And then you have the platform online.
yes.
That's even massive.
Yes, I would argue, or maybe for simplicity's sake, that it has value when it becomes a business.
Yes.
It has monetary value when
Yes.
it becomes business.
Right.
So I would put that under business value. And if you want a separate line, totally cool, add it as you see fit. But that's a great mind.
Yeah, I was gonna put it
shift
on the
perspective.
other, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, you can put
Okay.
it, yes.
Because the idea behind assets is that you can sell them.
Right.
So one argument is until you can sell your intellectual property or your brand or your business, what is it worth in this moment? Money-wise, there's value. I get that. But
Well,
yes.
you just brought up a good point, and that is our personal businesses
Yeah.
do have a value.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
How much would someone pay for it? Yeah.
Based on what.
Based on what it is.
Based on
right.
track record and.
Size of database.
Anticipated return, but yeah, it does have a value.
Right.
Yeah.
I think just actualizing what you have here.
Yeah.
I mean, monetizing it.
That's right.
The key, and it's there, people don't utilize it, right? Because it's right there, people want to learn, people want to,
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that mindset itself is very important, to have a 5-year, 10-year down vision. Say if we're agents and brokers now, where do you plan to be in 5 years with your business?
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I know some brokers like, see for example, exiting the business, and
Yeah,
you've got
you
some
need-
asset
yeah,
value.
you need
Sure.
an exit strategy.
Because you have a
As I say,
system,
the business
right?
does have value, and
Yeah.
that needs to be part of your exit strategy.
Right.
What are you going to do with that?
Right, right.
Before you.
So many agents and brokers, they just randomly work and do one
That's right.
listing here, one listing there, but they don't build that database.
Right.
And I think there's a mindset has to happen, like, hey, there's a value for this if you put a system in place.
Right. That is
Um,
that's more E to P that we're talking about.
Right, right.
Being moving from entrepreneurial to purposeful with your business, so that it has intrinsic value. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so that's assets on a net worth sheet. On the liability side, there's a list of things to consider that count against your assets. So basically any money you owe, period. Mortgages, student loans, there's credit card debt on there. Unpaid taxes, we all caught up, it's tax day, we caught up on taxes, hopefully. Okay, and then what happens, if you want to get all fancy with it, this is an example, throw in some numbers so that you could see what a net worth sheet, balance sheet, essentially, if you're running your business, it has a balance sheet, whether you know it or not, what it could look like. So this is a personal balance sheet. All my assets get listed up there, and then all my liabilities, and then you end up with a net worth number. And there are, I'll share some links in a minute, tons of ways to track this information so that you can make sure you're hitting it all, first of all, and watch that number over time. So once you do this activity, and you have where you are, then you know the gap, right? You know the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And that gap might be small, it might be big. It's probably a matter of perspective. It probably feels big for everyone, regardless of anything objective, I guess. So what do we do about it? And what's
Do whatever you can to increase the asset and decrease the liability.
Yeah. So exactly. So there's two things to look at. One is, besides owing this money, what am I paying on it? Like how much, so this is a balance sheet, remember, in business land. We also have, hopefully, we all have P&Ls for our business. Whether we know it or not, the same concept can exist in our personal world. It's not really profit and loss, it's just life. But we get to see what's coming in and what's going out. And so one thing that I look for is how much are these liabilities actually costing me? So how much interest am I paying on that credit card debt? We talked about that a lot earlier. Because then I know that maybe that's a thing, that's a tangible step that I can take. And I did recently, we bought a car a year and a half ago on a loan, and I didn't realize I was paying 6% on this loan. So I paid it off. I had the luxury of being able to do that, but I recognize that like I'm earning 5% in the bank, I'm paying 6%. That's the wrong ratio.
Right.
Our other car is at 2%. That one I'm not paying
Right,
off
exactly.
because the cash is earning more in the bank account than I'm paying in interest on that car. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
That's-
yeah,
okay.
you look for the no cost or lower cost alternative.
Yeah.
To reduce that. I remember when I graduated from law school, went into a recession, interest rates were really high, and we were offered in student loans, we could consolidate our student loans. And the one loan at 7% interest, and interest rates. And I was telling people, I said, this is a great rate, you know, at that time, it was a great rate to get on a student loan, because the rates were double digit, and going higher and higher. But a lot of the people, they didn't understand interest rate, they didn't understand what it meant. And I had to keep telling them, you know, take advantage of this, because you'd have 4 different loans, all at different rates, and the 7 was just a great rate to consolidate.
Yeah.
You know, at that time.
Right. So that's
Now
some
it's, I mean, student loans now are just.
different beast. Yeah. Yep. So and that's part of the purpose here is you might see I should have interest rates next to all of these. That would help a lot to provide clarity on what to tackle first. Because the idea is if I have, in this case, $50,000 in my bank account, and it's earning 5%, but I'm paying 8% or 20% or whatever in credit card debt, I need to think about moving that money.
Yeah.
But if all these are, let's say, 2%, then I might choose to invest instead, because I can earn more than 2% in an investment. That's kind of a simplified way to look at that calculus. Is either pay down a high interest rate or invest if you can earn more.
And depending on how aggressively you're doing this, then you should be, if you're not doing it monthly, you should be checking it quarterly or every 6 months, or at worst case, at least annually, just to see where you are.
Yeah.
Because I've done many times, and it's always interesting when I come across an old one and I look at it, and I can see, see how things have changed,
Right.
over time.
Yeah. Does anyone track their stuff in a format that looks anything like this? Yay! Over time, how?
Actually, my husband and I, we started doing that together.
Okay.
We create a spreadsheet
Yeah.
of seeing how much we spent, sometimes with groceries.
Yeah.
Every little thing, even if you spent like 50 cents somewhere, write it down.
Mm-hmm.
So we started tracking how much we spent a month, and then of course, he created a sheet where he created what our assets and everything else was. So, I mean, we realized we spent this amount of money with the mortgage that we have, everything. And then this is how much we're bringing in as income.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we increase that
Mhm.
and decrease that? So cutting back on, I mean, things that we subscribed to, like cut back on. I think I took, unsubscribed Netflix and Disney Plus and ESPN and everything, just to see how that, it makes a difference.
Oh, yes.
You don't know what,
it
you don't
does.
know what or where to cut it until you write it all down
Yeah.
and see it all in one place.
Yeah.
And then you go, you don't use that, get rid of that, get rid of that.
There's a
Or there's
service.
an alternative, there's an alternative to that.
Yeah, there's a service that makes that super easy. I'm drawing a blank on its name, but essentially, you link it with your credit card, and it'll go through and look for subscriptions, find them
Yeah,
all, and
right.
let you click unsubscribe, like right there.
Yeah.
And their little ad is that they save on average $775 a year for their users through this ability to see subscriptions that you didn't even know you were paying for. And it's the annual ones that get me personally.
One other thing, that in certain circles, financial circles, net worth is, they only consider net worth less principal residence.
Mhm. Yep.
For
So you-
accredited
So you
investments.
take your principal residence out of the equation and look at what's your net worth.
Yeah.
And that's that can be a sobering number for a lot of people when you take your
When you
house
take the
out of the
principal out.
equation.
Yeah, I would say it depends on what the purpose of what you're doing this exercise for.
Exactly.
Like when you're thinking about where you are and where you need to be, I would think that the value of your principal residence absolutely counts. If you're sitting on $1 million of equity and part of your plan is to sell everything and move to Costa Rica, that's a real $1 million. That's not pretend. But to
So when
Steve's point,
but yeah, I think it's more relevant when you're looking at like investing now.
Yeah.
You know, what are you doing in the next, 6 months, a year, 5 years? Because you're not, if you have no plans to sell that house, even though you've got all that wealth and that equity, it's not, unless you're gonna go borrow money,
Yeah.
it's not liquid, it's not
Yep.
cash. So you've got to look at, what do I have, what do I actually have liquid cash to invest?
Right.
Don't get,
yeah, and there are a lot of investments that require that you calculate your net worth without your principal
Without
residence.
it, right,
Yeah.
without it.
Yeah, so that's
One
right.
thing I wanted to share from my personal experience is about spending. So like I said earlier, I personally don't use credit card unless I really have to do on a flight or something, or a rental cost.
Mhm.
One technique we tried as a family years ago, and it was very, very powerful result. Take out all your credit cards and debit card out of your wallet, get $2,000 out of cash out of the bank account, and see how long it lasts you.
Mm.
You will see when you go to buy that coffee and pay $7 for coffee, you think twice, should I share it with my wife or should I just buy one or two?
Yeah.
Because then it's $14 or, because before you know, your cash, it disappears
Yeah.
within 15 days. And you're like, why did I spend all this money?
Yeah.
I mean,
So having cash is very powerful compared to swipe your card. Now it's even better, you just
I
swipe
mean,
this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I go out, I go out and buy my lunch, every day,
Mhm.
okay, almost every day. And I could make something at home, but I don't, I just, but I've joined the Panera Sip Club.
Mm-hmm.
and I
Coffee's
pay-
free.
Well, no, you pay,
I think $10 something. I remember
you
something.
pay a fee for it, but you know how much money I saved on drinks last year? $770.
How much did you spend on drinks?
No, I mean, I bought the lunch,
That's
the
homework.
drink
Oh,
was
okay,
free.
okay.
Yeah, I bought the
Yeah.
lunch and the drink was free, and then they tell, and
No,
it
I
says, you
think
saved
we
$750 on drinks by belonging to this club. They hook you in to come.
That's
But
crazy.
it's a true, it is a true savings, I got the drink.
Yeah.
I take some of the stuff out, you can
So
save a lot.
2021, my Starbucks
We
bill
spend
was
money on
$12,800.
Okay, there's an expense you
Yeah,
can
that's
get.
a little, yeah.
Ridiculous. I stopped going to Starbucks.
No, Starbucks is, I mean, I grew up, Starbucks was a thing. You got your coffee from Starbucks, but going into your high school class or like junior high, that's when it
Yeah.
became big for me. And, I look at it and I make myself a cup of coffee at home. Okay, there might be a little difference. I don't want anybody yelling at me.
People are
There is a
hooked on it.
difference.
Oh, yours at home's probably
Mine is
better.
better.
Yeah.
Mine is, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, but I'm just like, you can flavor it the way you want, and
Yeah.
that's way better. And
2 weeks ago, I was in Maui, and in the little store in our resort, they serve Starbucks coffee, but there's no advertising at all. I go get a drink, and I come out, and I'm walking around the pool to my cabana, and these women are going, "Where'd you get that? Where'd you get that?" I mean, they were all freaking, "Where'd you get that Starbucks?" I go, "Oh, it's right in the market there behind the bar." Oh, they didn't know, they were like, I could tell, they were so happy that, oh man, I can go get my Starbucks.
Oh, that's so
You know?
sad.
Yeah, no, really, they
It
like,
is.
To
"Where'd you
be
get
honest,
that?"
there's a lot
It's
of people,
addiction.
their
Yeah.
day does not start until they had that cup of coffee from Starbucks.
And I
There's a
knew,
lot
I
of
knew,
people
I
like
knew
that.
every day, every morning thereafter, I knew they were gonna go to that Starbucks and get
Yep.
something every day.
Wow, wow. Okay, so what did we hear? You do it, you've done it.
We've done it, actually, now that, like,
This.
I'm seeing this, I'm
Mhm.
gonna be like, let's do this again, because actually, you kind of know where your money is going. And even like, Amazon is a big, when we spend money on Amazon, our credit card just hits Amazon, doesn't tell you what you spent it on. So
Right.
you actually keep track of, okay, I swiped for Amazon, this is what I paid for, what the item was, and this is how much it cost.
Yeah.
You know what you're buying, and you know, well, was that buy necessary, or was it just because I just wanted it, And if you kind of cut those things out, this is what my husband
Yeah,
tells me.
We did it last year, yeah, it's very, very helpful.
Yeah.
And nowadays there's so many great tools that help you do this without having to do that. Mint is shutting down, but there's a new competitor in town that I can't remember the name of, that it's links to your bank accounts in a secure way, so it can, and credit cards and all that, pull all that for you. You can add your other assets, and it'll give you a breakdown of your net worth, as well as be a spending tracker as well.
Do you have that? Do you
Do you
use
know what
that?
it is?
Yeah, I'll find that for you. Well, there's a handful of competitors out there. We've used the one called Personal Capital, which is an Empower company, I think. And then the new one to town, I'll have to think of his name.
That's
Is-
subscription based or?
Personal Capital, no, they all have free models. Personal Capital is trying to sell you financial products. That's how they make their money. I don't know what the new one does to try to make their money. Mint was an Intuit product, so they were trying to sell you all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
QuickBooks or tax services.
Intuit would have something.
Well, that was Mint. They're shutting it down. Yeah. Or it's already shut down. It was
It's a
big
good
news in that
concept,
world.
though.
It is. It's a great concept. Yeah. Yep. Oh, the one that does your subscriptions has Rocket in the name.
Oh.
Is that-
Rocket Money.
Rocket Mortgage?
It's not Rocket Mortgage. Is it Rocket Money?
Rocket Money, yes.
Okay, that might be it. Super helpful. Like, oh yeah, I remember subscribing to that thing. We found, it turns out I was paying for Adobe Premiere Pro for my son, who was super interested in making videos for a hot minute. And it was not a cheap one. It was like a $30 a month subscription. So that was nice to get rid of. Painful to find. Nice to get rid of. Let's see, what do we want to talk about? Let's go, yeah, let's stop there for a minute.
One
Yes.
to make a mistake.
Yeah.
Did you talk about cars?
A
Like
little.
lease or purchase?
Oh
what do
gosh,
you-
do you want to talk about lease or purchase? I
Yeah.
read something just today.
It's a good thing that you mentioned, I wanna know about that too.
Yeah.
I don't know about EV, where are they going with these?
Oh my goodness. I don't, okay, I don't know that I want to talk about those things.
Yeah.
I get to control this conversation, right? Is that my job here?
Okay, you can move on.
As far as lease and versus owning, I mean, what I would look at is, what are you paying in interest over time? So what is a car actually costing you? And then what's it gonna be worth? There was, somebody posted, I think it was just this morning, buying a $40,000 car, spending $50,000 over the X number of years while I pay it off, and then it's worth $16,000.
Which is not okay. Is it good? No.
I don't know, is it? I mean, if you're okay with that, that's great.
But you can write off leases.
That's
right?
right, the part with the write-off,
That's
that's
the
it.
part that I'm
Well,
interested in.
theoretically, you can write off a car too if it's owned and by the corporation.
Yeah.
So
yes.
there are options both ways.
Yeah.
So feel free to talk to your CPA and see where that break even is. I would say the moral of the story is if I think how I would view it is if you cannot buy a car in cash, don't buy a new car. That's where I'm at, because it's going to be worth less the
Oh,
second you
not
drive it
new,
off the
not
lot.
new. Oh, yeah, because lease is only new.
Well, it
I mean,
depends
cars
on, it
depreciate
depends on the
that way.
brand of car that you get to.
Mhm.
Because the-
Sure, they
the
do,
maintenance
yeah.
expenses can be very high on certain brands
Yeah.
over
There's,
others.
this conversation actually happened with oh my god, the guy that came from Fox, Chris. No, he went from Fox 9 and he's on CNN now. I forget his name, Chris something. He had this conversation with another newscaster, and they're talking about cars. She's like, I'd rather buy one, and he was like, I lease one, and she was like, that's because you can write your leases off.
Yeah.
You know, it was a good conversation. It was, you might know him. He was on Fox. He was big.
So, yeah, well, I think it depends on what the purpose of the car is. Like, if you're a boo and you are into cars and you want to try out a new car every year, then lease a car, right? You know that you're going to have that expense forever. It's never going away, but you get to live out that life. If you're looking at it though as a financial decision, if that's the primary factor, then in my view, especially with interest rates where they are, is you buy a cheap used car. And I'm saying this as someone who bought a very expensive new car, and I hate it.
You hate buying it, but not the car.
No, I hate having it. It was a decision
I'll buy
that
it
shouldn't have
from
been made.
you.
Yeah.
If you-
How much is it worth? It's a Lucid.
Well, you're gonna pay, you know.
They
if
drop
you-
price huge, right? On the
Yeah, on the-
Teslas and
yeah.
all this.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
there's like a discount going on right now, I think.
Yeah, and EVs are not doing well.
They're not doing well, yeah.
There's a lot of rebates available there's a lot of rebates on leasing right now.
But in general, for country cars, it's not okay.
What's that?
In general, for car dealers, it's not that good. They're
What-
not doing that good.
Oh, just car dealers in general?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, you're gonna generally, depending on the vehicle, you're likely gonna be able to lease a vehicle and pay less per month than if you bought it outright.
Mm-hmm.
But then you don't own the asset, so
Yeah.
when the lease is over, then it has a value that you can, just let them take it, or you can buy it from them. There are certain brands that hold their value, they have a higher residual value than
Mhm.
others, and you can, at the end of the lease, you owe them much less, to buy it outright, you owe them much less than what the actual residual value is much higher. There are certain brands that hold their value much higher than others, so that's the other thing.
I think-
They had that with the.
Because I've done
regular.
that. I've
I
had.
think we
I've
need a
had-
class on how to buy a
Okay,
car.
let's move on.
Let's do that. Oh,
I
get it.
leased the Lexus, and then at the end, the buyout was well below what it was worth.
Mhm.
So then I knew the car, so then I bought it outright
Yeah.
as a used car and owned it for forever.
So-
I think that's a smart way to go by, I mean, at least you'll know, hey, did I like
You
the
know,
car?
well, when
I
you
did
buy
it.
that car, you know what you're getting, because you've already owned
You've
it
had
for
it,
3
yeah.
or 4 years.
Yeah.
You're not buying someone else's problem.
Are you offering to teach a class on how to buy a car?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, let's do that, sir.
Cool, I'll talk to Archita about that.
Well,
Get on
the
the
secret
calendar.
now is there's these huge rebates, so what you do is you go and lease it,
Mhm.
and you get the big rebate, and then if you have the cash, you pay it off. You have to hold the lease for 4 months, and then you can just pay it off. But you get the rebate, you can get $7,500,
fine.
$15,000 rebates, knock the price down, lease for 4 months, and then pay it off at the end of 4 months.
All right, stay tuned for that on the calendar.
Yeah.
Okay, so success cycle. This is a concept that Tony Robbins teaches on, if I'm remembering correctly. In life, we have a cycle that happens in basically in anything we do. So we're talking about money and investing here. So as you look at the thing, I'll define it real quick. Potential. What could happen in your money world? How big is that potential, or small, right now in your mind? That's what that is. Action. What are we actually doing about it? What do you do? What happens in your world? What do you see from that action? Those are the results. And then how does that change your belief about your money story, about your potential and what is possible? And this works in a cycle. So whatever, we can start in the top left, because that's how we read in this culture at least. So you have that in mind, the potential. It is what drives what action you actually take. The action that you actually take drives your results. We talk about that all the time in real estate. We live in this land in real estate trainings. What do you do? What do you get? What do you do? What do you get? What do you do? What do you get? But the results that you get drive your beliefs. And when you have beliefs, that drives what you think is possible. And when you think what is possible is different, you take different action. And it goes over and over and over again. So the question is, where do you have control? Action. Where else?
Belief.
Yes. Action
That's
and
number
belief.
one.
Yeah. That's
Belief
where you
and
have the
action.
most control, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Belief and action.
Yeah.
You
So,
believe in yourself
yeah.
and do action, don't sit on your bum and do nothing.
Right. Well, and allow it to flow through
Right.
potential and results.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can choose what action to take, and we can work to have beliefs that serve us. And this is so important in money in this culture where we tend to not talk about money and such. We tend to not talk about personal money stories. Is that fair? I'm trying to. Yeah. Okay. And so there's a lot of stigma
We tend
around
to
it.
after we reach a certain age.
Okay, it shifts. Okay, that's
I
good.
mean,
to
I
know.
remember, in high school and in our late teens and early 20s, everybody talked about their job and how much money they made. We were all open about, how,
Huh.
'cause everyone's looking for a better
that's
job to
true.
move to.
Yeah.
And we openly talked about what we did and how much we made, but then you reach a certain point where you don't share that anymore.
Right.
And I have friends that, sometimes we will open up, if the question comes up, but a lot of times, because everybody's in different stages, you don't want to bring it up, and But again, I just remember, as high school and college.
Interesting, yeah.
Everyone was open about it.
Okay.
I remember that.
Even at coming out of law school, everyone was open about what kind of job offers they were getting and how much they were gonna make and whatnot, because it was all helpful information for
Yeah,
everybody.
and so how does our openness or non-openness, whichever your history happens to display, how does that impact your beliefs about your money story? I can tell you how it impacts mine is I make up stories. Like I don't have any real data about what's happening in other people's worlds, so I imagine it and I compare myself in an imaginary world, and then what happens?
Well, you're either uplifted
And you
or I
take
need some
action.
work to do.
Yeah, well, more of that first. Yeah, so usually I'm going down that road. I'm like, oh man, I'm feeling stuck, or I'm feeling anxious or scarce, or whatever it is.
That's personality,
Yeah, and there's some personality there. There's some history of just what's happened in life, in each of our lives, and yeah, like that is a place that we can change things. We can change things through some action. Listening, there's great podcasts these days on all sorts of things, including how to have a better mindset around money, or read books on shifting perspective. And taking that action allows us to see the potential that is possible. I know in my money story, when I see people that are incredibly successful, I cannot imagine that they were just like me, ever. Like the connection is so hard for me to, thread, I guess. And shifting into a mindset where like, no, that guy, like I mentioned John Cena earlier, that guy worked in Gold's Gym. That's where he got his start. I was talking with Ben Kenny once, and now I'm forgetting his story, but he did not start off in an uplifted position. He built things from nothing. And there's so many stories like that out there, and I know my default is to forget that that's a thing. My default is, oh no, they must have been handed that. They must have gotten lucky. Like, no, they believed in themselves and they took the right action. So, believe in yourself. You have the potential to do whatever you believe you have the potential to do, which is going to be different for us. And that's why this is circular too, is because we crank it up a little bit or down. Sometimes our mindset goes the wrong way. And that impacts the whole cycle, and it just repeats over and over and over again. And that's why these classes are so important. Jitu and I were talking earlier, or I guess there were a few of us here, that sometimes we don't go to these classes, this class or other classes, for the information. We have the information. We go to it for a shift. We go to it to be reminded of something or to break through a mindset or limiting belief. And so that's what this is all about, is how do we, just one step at a time, shift our belief, allow us to see potential, shift our actions, shift our belief again. On and on. Yeah.
At what point did you start going from being like frugal to being, I can spend this, I can earn
Yeah. There was some cycling there too, because there were times where I go through cycles, like where I feel like I have a lot of money, and then my behavior changes, and I spend it, or I spend more, and then I feel scarce, and so I am all frugal and may not invest but may save, and then I get back into investing, and then I feel like I have money again. So that sort of concept happens too. It's a belief of what I have and what is true. I would say when things really changed, though, was probably just a few years ago, pandemic lands, 2020, 2021. I remember my wife coming home from shopping, and she was thrilled because she liked a dress, picked it off the rack, and went and checked out, did not glance at the price tag, and felt so much freedom in that action, because she knew, like, whatever the price was, she wanted that dress, and we had the money. And that was freedom to her. Now she's back to, like, that was kind of silly. That was a silly mindset for her, she admits at this point. But at that time, like, that was amazing for her. Yeah.
I think the pandemic in itself changed a lot of mindsets.
Mhm.
I think people, I mean, traffic, you're running the traffic, but people are moving are actually, I'm seeing people that used to be homebodies are actually getting out
Yeah.
and doing things. And I think you realize, you know, life is short, you should definitely enjoy it, be frugal, you know, but then also enjoy and be out there, you know, because you're not gonna take the money with you, you might as well spend it, right? So, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's one way of looking at it.
Yeah, and know where you get your joy from, though.
Yeah.
Like for us, it's always been experiences.
I think in answer to your question, you've got, you know, it's spend, hold, donate, invest. Well, the question is, in what order do you do those for? Okay? Spends first is gonna be, you know,
Housing and
you know,
groceries.
your living expenses. Holding initially is, the next step is hold initially to accumulate the cash, to establish a reserve. So, especially in our business, so you never have to worry about having the money that you need to spend. And I think, and then, once that hold pot has gotten big enough, I mean, we tell people, or at least I tell people what I was taught, well, when I got into business, it was, you have 6 months of reserves in the bank.
Mhm.
And you can afford to go 6 months with no income. That's what, now, we say 12 months. Because the businesses, there's more people in the business, the business has gotten harder. So you should have 12 months of your living expenses in reserve. So if you set that as a goal, well, now you know, this is what I need to spend, this is a reserve I need to establish. Once you're there, once you've got 12 months of reserve, you should be feeling pretty comfortable. Well, what's the next step is invest.
Mm-hmm.
So then you gotta decide, what's my investment goal? And you know, and I would look at it as an annual goal, as a percentage of what my income is, whatever that number might be relative to your income. Is it 10%, is it 20%, is it 30%? Set that investment goal. And at the point that you've reached that goal, now you're in a position where, well, I can donate, or I can donate to myself, spend it on myself. Go buy the Lucid, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because you've already checked off those 3 of the 4 that were the most important. Does that make sense? But the problem is, the piece that's missing from many people's lives is the investment piece.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the hold piece is very, very minimal. I mean, I'm trying to remember the statistic of the percentage of people in the United States, and it's a high percentage. It may even be pushing 80% that live paycheck
Yeah.
to paycheck.
Yeah.
Yes. It's an
Mhm.
action.
It's a high percentage. It's
Yes.
for our wealth as a nation, it's embarrassingly
Yeah.
high.
Because the
Okay.
culture is not there for that.
Right,
Yeah.
you know, but again, that,
And we're a consumer culture.
Yeah,
Like we're
consumer
trained
culture,
to spend money when we have
I'll
it.
say that.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. Our economy thrives on consumer spending, and
Yeah.
that's what drives it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's all choice, but
Capitalism.
there are choices that we're
No,
making.
that's- yeah.
Regardless of, living and income expense.
Yeah,
But
and
that's
not
also
to,
where it builds
you know,
wealth too, right?
you know,
It's
in
the whole concept of
real
wealth.
estate, you know, starting in real estate at an early age is one of the smartest things you can ever do.
Yep.
I mean, you're talking about house hacking, and I shared an Uber in Austin, Texas, maybe 10 years ago, and got talking about, you know, the other guy was with, I think he was with Facebook, and he'd been, in fact, we were talking about where we are and the markets and stuff. And he goes, yeah, I used to be in Newark with Facebook, and but then when we got on real estate, and he shared the story of a young couple in their 20s, bought a fourplex, FHA, 3.5% down,
Mm-hmm.
and then every year, bought another one. They own 76 doors.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine the income, no matter where it is, imagine their income was 76 doors.
or their worth. Like even if,
That-
yeah, even
Oh,
if
it's all
they're-
relative to
yeah.
where they live, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, just think about it. And I tell at the young age all the time, because I'm there, no one took, I didn't learn that, I was taught buy a house.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wasn't taught buy a multi-unit property,
Yep.
you know, and it's just
People
like,
struck-
and I tell him, I said, yeah, here's your
Yeah.
goal, go find a multi-unit property.
Yeah, and that
And
doesn't.
depending on, and FHA limits get higher and higher in different counties, so you know, it's crazy what you can do depending on the rental income there, just exactly what he did.
Yeah,
you know.
yep. And
I
that's
share that story all the time, it's like, start.
the challenge.
start young.
The challenge a lot of us have in this culture is the lack of instant gratification. Like it's not your dream house. Plain and simple. It's an investment that also serves as a home. And that's a mindset that some people can't get over. My team teaches house hacking pretty consistently, and we see a lot of people come in liking the idea, but then going to buy their dream house.
Exactly.
And that's great. That's a choice that they made with all the information. But some of us don't have all the information, and so that's why I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Well, and depending on what generation you're in, I mean, for a lot of us, the first priority was a car.
Yeah.
It wasn't a house.
Oh, I
It
bought a
was
house
car,
before
it
a
was
car. That's a great point.
It was car
Yeah.
and rent, I mean, it was,
Yeah.
it was, because the media just, that was, I grew up in a car culture.
Yeah.
That's what it was all about, and that's all we thought about, was having the coolest car.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't think about the real estate.
We were a one-car family until the pandemic, actually.
Yeah.
So the first, 12 years of our marriage.
Wow.
Yeah. Sometimes 0 car. We biked all over the place.
But I have to, I share, I have a friend, my age, he and his wife met at Jack in the Box, on some cruising night, and they got married shortly thereafter. They still live and own the house they bought in, I believe, 1974,
Mhm.
75. They're still in that house. And you don't even wanna know what they paid. No,
Got a
not
bit
even,
of-
not even
11,
50.
11.
Bit of net worth in
Not
there.
even 50.
So can someone share an aha or takeaway from this particular conversation around the success cycle?
I think we all know it's very obvious to put the action, but I think the belief sometimes, at least for me personally speaking, can be like the struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. I struggle in both. Probably because of the belief, though.
Sometimes potential, because you undermine yourself, right? So sometimes
Yeah.
I find myself undermining myself, even though I know I'm capable.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have these talks in your, I guess it comes to belief too, you're right. It's just whatever you believe, if I can, if I can't.
That leads to a lack of action.
That leads
Yeah.
to lack of action, so,
I know that well.
yeah. Or like that fear of rejection,
Mm.
that's, that kind of drives things too sometimes.
Yes, running from fear as opposed to towards pleasure.
And the potential, I feel, I see the potential, but I'm not taking action, and I don't know why sometimes, because I'm a research freak, and that maybe it's because I'm afraid it's not gonna turn out, or there are other options. I'm like, okay, I have so many investment options, where do I go? And I don't take any action.
Okay, let's talk afterwards, because that sounds like a belief challenge. Like
Yeah.
maybe a story I have is that you believe that you need to know everything before you take action. That's a common belief that a lot of
Yeah,
us have.
oh, yeah.
And it does land in the belief section.
Yeah, I see
Typically,
that.
lack of action is a belief.
Yeah,
Or caused by.
so the potential is more about
Potential it's essentially
going over the
what you
beliefs.
believe your potential is. Like,
Oh.
it's pent up, it's what is actually possible given your belief system.
Mhm.
So some of us in this room might believe that our absolute peak looks one specific way. Like no matter what I do, I will never X, Y, and Z. Never own the private jet. That's an easy example for me.
You don't want to own a private jet.
And I said that too. You don't want to own a private jet.
You don't want to.
If that's your dream, change it. But let's say it's your dream. Maybe that's a belief that I'll never own a private jet. Even if I wanted to, I can never do it. That's going to limit my potential. It puts a ceiling on it. I can't, if that's my belief, my potential is less than that. So that's what potential is. It's driven by your belief. Okay. So believe you can do it. Yeah.
Well, the one thing that you have to be really cognizant of, both personally and as a real estate agent and consultant, is you've got to understand that some customers are wage earners and some people are self-employed like we are. And you know, it is two different worlds from a dollars and cents standpoint. You know, so I find myself I have to be careful sometimes when I start sharing a lot of ideas, financial ideas, with people who don't have the income, don't have the short-term income potential that we have. And so you've got to make sure that you know, they're wage earners. You know, they've only got so much bandwidth, but you can certainly help them on everything we're talking about as far as budgets and those sorts of things, because they probably, you know, like I said, they're spending money on Starbucks, they're using credit, you know, so that's where you really got to focus. The investment piece is kind of like is phase two. You know, the first thing is how to get them into a house. I mean, you all know the statistics. I mean, you know, the numbers keep getting more staggering. Okay, you know, the average net worth of a homeowner now in the United States is pushing, you know, 400,000, and the average tenant's about 10,000 at most. Okay.
Yep.
There's a reason why homeownership is so important.
Yeah. So it's like 35x.
Yeah.
Being a homeowner.
Exactly.
And there's some there's some cause and effect there. So we're gonna wrap up. I mean, I'm happy to hang out. I've got a call at 1:30, but otherwise I'm free. But let's run through a few last things. So these are the financial disciplines, things to consider. I think maybe as a culture, we're so focused on income and maybe investment planning, and we kind of ignore everything else. So I want to put this on your radar. Income plan, that's your actual dollars coming in. Cash flow, your investments, shedding income, shedding cash flow. Tax planning, how do you pay less over time? Investment planning, we've been talking about that a lot. What are you actually investing in and why, and what's it going to do for you over the long run? Retirement planning, what's going to happen when you can't or don't want to work anymore? Can you actually live the lifestyle that you want to live? Estate planning, what happens when you kick it? And risk management, insurance planning, what happens when things go wrong? So we're not going to spend a lot of time on here, but I do want to give you, there's more to think about that we haven't talked about. And keep these on your radar, and if something jumped out, let's talk afterwards about what maybe the next steps are. And let me get you some resources here. Whoop, where are they? There they are. Okay, so there's an amazing series on whenmakegive.com. That's Ben Kenny's kind of side play company. Whenmakegive.com/wealth, if I remember correctly. You can't click on that, but if you could, it would take you right there. And it has, I'll click on it actually and see what happens. Okay, so yeah, it's gonna ask me to sign up. So it's a podcast series, and it comes with a ton of resources to walk you through a lot of what we did here, except in workshop format. So there'll be homework. What does your net worth look like? It comes with trackers. What does your net worth look like over time from month to month? There's cash flow planning. There's that cup of coffee exercise that I mentioned, which I probably have saved somewhere. So if anyone wants to stick around, I'll try to find it and pull it up. There's a compound interest calculator. There's the coffee one is actually called the compounding impact of discretionary spending, essentially. If you take that discretionary spending and move it to investments, what would be the impact on your life? And it's a big number over time. surprisingly.
One thing, people have this myth that you have to have millions to invest to make millions.
Yeah, do you?
I think the thing is you don't, right?
What's the minimum?
There isn't.
There isn't, there really isn't,
So-
yeah.
So I think the key is for a lot of people to know where to invest that little that they have.
Yeah, yeah. All right, well, let's spend a second there as we wrap up.
Yeah.
Where do you invest $5 a month?
On yourself.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. To increase the human capital, that's an option. Where else? Can anyone not invest $5 a month?
You all can.
We all can?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, cool. How do you do it?
Does it mean savings too? Can you put in savings? No,
So,
it's
so I like Steve's model as incredibly simple. Spend what you need to spend, save everything until you hit a cap, and then invest. I also recognize that investments compound over time, and so there is, even while you're building up savings, I would say there's an argument to put a little towards investing. I don't know what that split is. I'm sure you can come up with a percent that makes sense. Maybe 90% goes towards savings and 10% goes to investing until you reach your savings level, and then you can put more towards investing. Shoot, I forgot what question I was answering.
How do you save $5?
Oh, where to put
But
it?
if you,
Yeah.
if savings is considered investment.
Oh, yeah, so the answer is no, yeah. Savings is important, but no, yeah.
Quick question, and I'm not sure we're gonna get to this, so, but when you talk about joint investments, like with others,
Yeah.
you know, whatever, is there a minimum to that, or?
That's kind of where we're at right now. What do you do with $5? Because you can't invest anything, you can't invest in everything with $5. Many investments have investment minimums. Like a down payment on an investment property, if you're buying it by yourself, is going to be more than $5, probably. Now you might be able to scrape together the money through private lending or whatever, so I don't want to limit your belief there. But let's say, to simplify things, like $5 investments are probably going to end up in stocks and bonds, or there's in the art world, I told you I bought a painting. Masterworks.com allows for very small minimum investments. And there's a lot now. There's crowdfunding for real estate as well. Sometimes the minimum's more like $500, but it doesn't have to be giant. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
If you're looking for the easy button, Betterment.com is a great example of, they'll just do it for you. Hook up your bank account, they will take $5 and stick it in an index fund, for example. That's an option.
Betterment.com.
Betterment.com. Uh-oh. Yeah, Betterment.com, and that's, you know, part of an investment strategy. As you're putting more towards investments, you may choose to spread the money around, diversify, and I love talking about that, but we're out of time, so we're not going to. So this might be a piece of your investment strategy, is auto put money in the S&P 500 every month, and go out and buy real estate. But to start with, $5 a month, I think they go down to $5 a month. So there's options like that. Automated investing. There you go.
Joe, you have any crowdfunding platforms that you recommend for real estate?
Are you looking to crowdfund a deal, or are you looking to invest in a deal?
Oh, maybe a crowdfunding deal.
Okay, let's talk afterwards.
Okay.
Okay, that's advanced stuff for you, Paul. Actually, I won't even have the answer for you, but I can point you in the right direction. Okay, so as we wrap up, give me an aha or two or three, and then we can stick around.
I just
if you want.
wanted to share some reading material, and especially if you have children. You know, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and The Millionaire Next Door. Those are two must-reads, not only for you, but for your children.
Yep.
And if you have young children, the Boy Scouts have a merit badge called Personal Management. And it teaches them, it's like, imagine you're gonna buy some big thing and you're gonna have to save and budget to save money to buy that. And so it's Boy Scout age is 11 to 18. So you can just Google Boy Scout Personal Management Merit Badge, and it's written for an 11 to 18-year-old. You know.
I earned that.
And it's a really good read for a young child to read.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
it was great. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, good. All right, so we're in aha section. Who's got some ahas? Yeah.
I guess how you waited to buy a car after you had investments.
Some people need a car. I get that too. I biked by 3.5 miles to work every day, or took the bus if it was too rainy.
What if you're a car geek?
Right, you might make different decisions. I'm not saying that that's the one to take.
I bought a car while I was in escrow on my first house.
Oh. I bet your agent loved you.
You should have seen the look on his face. I pull into the Daly's parking lot where it was our hang, it was where Black Bear Diner is. You know, I'm like 2 weeks in escrow, and I get out of a black Porsche. I'm an attorney at the time. I get out of a black Porsche. And he looks at it and goes, "Where did you get that?" I said, "Well, I just bought it." He goes, "What were you thinking?" So they never, back then in the 80s, they never did another credit check before close.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I didn't own the car when I filled out the mortgage, the application for the loan. It came later, and I just never told anybody that I bought the car.
That's
So
not
when
how
I
it's supposed to
closed escrow,
work.
I had a Porsche in the garage when I closed escrow.
Oh, man.
One thing
That was 1984. You can't do that now.
So I know a lot of us make a lot of money, so one thing I've kind of streamlined this now. When I get my commission check, I put a percentage of my money towards a donation.
Yeah.
And I've been consistent on it. I think, we all make a lot of money in our life, but I firmly believe is what you give is what you really get back.
Right.
Because money will come and go. If you can make a change in somebody's life. So I try to give it to some family who really need it,
Mm-hmm.
and I see a big benefit from that.
Yeah.
So I encourage everybody. I know we have KW Care and in each of our circle of families or friends or back home sometime, if your family can, with $100, it goes a long way.
Right.
So I encourage everybody to think about it carefully. Just give that percentage of, just maybe just 1%, and you'll be surprised that 1% sometime, depending on your income bracket, is a lot of money for a lot of people.
And it also helps shift your belief.
Yeah.
Which increases your potential.
Yeah.
Because it's an abundance mindset. To
Yes.
be able to give anything
Yes.
is an abundance mindset. So that's a great
Yeah.
trick when you're feeling stuck and scarce,
Yeah.
is to start giving money.
'Cause
Even if it's a little.
On this note, friend, everything we have to consider as a blessing, because there are a lot of people out there do not have everything that we really have. And you have to really appreciate that. Once you appreciate that, sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Because you can do a lot better than where we are. But if you constantly feel, I don't have enough, I need more, it's never enough.
So here's the optional
So
expense
donate-
calculator I was talking about. Are we gonna go out for coffee every day, 5 days a week?
Are you kidding me?
So this is assuming that you could instead invest and earn 10% compounded monthly, which might be on the high side. I'll see if I can find an adjustment for that. So if you're on the younger side, I'm talking, million-ish bucks between that 30 and 50 year mark from now, from simply redirecting $5 a day into an investment. Stuff adds up. And I don't think there's a graph on here. Because of compounding interest, it's not a straight line. Wealth accumulates, oh, sorry, you guys are backwards. Wealth accumulates and compounds, so you end up on an exponential, which is why the numbers get really big fast over time.
So savings account doesn't do that.
So it compounds, yeah. The question is the rate of return,
Interest rate.
are you maximizing your rate of return?
Yes.
And there's a compound interest calculator in here.
Are you sharing that photo with us?
So yeah, this is all in WinMakeGive. So if you go to winmakegive.com/wealth, sign up. All these resources are in there. Or if you don't want to sign up, let me know and I can share with you. But yeah, this is how money accumulates over time. In this case, what are we doing? $1,000, adding $100 a month, and let's just look at 6%. So that's how your money grows over time. Pretty cool stuff, compounding interest. Yeah.
As long as you don't pay taxes on it.
Even if, oh, yeah. Yeah, right. But if you aren't earning it and you're still paying taxes on your income,
Yeah.
that's where you don't do well.
Don't put it in the, under the mattress, that's the idea.
Right. Yeah, don't put money under the mattress. It tends to devalue over time.
I
Yeah.
had a guy once said he has 1.2 million under the mattress.
Yeah.
$1.2 million under his mattress.
For how long?
Well,
Like,
he wanted to buy a house.
and the
so
reason
his
I
money,
asked,
said, I
like,
can't take this.
Think about
This
it.
was
Like,
in Hayward.
if it was right. If you think back in time, though, like $1.2 million could have bought you what 20 years ago, 25 years ago. But it has done nothing for however long it's been sitting under that mattress, except become worthless.
To him, it was, he avoided the tax man.
Any last aha?
That's good presentation.
You gotta
Thank
Yes.
you.
We talked a lot of
start doing something.
Yeah. Do
Don't
something.
Take some action.
Yeah. I had a quote up there.
Yeah, even if it's asking someone, for help or advice or as to what should be the next step.
Yeah. There's a quote that always gets me around my inaction. I don't remember who said it, which is why it says someone. But I remember hearing that, like, oh shit, I gotta do something. So yeah, I'm with Steve. Do something. And if that starts with tracking your expenses, then track your expenses. Filling out a net worth tracker, do that. Do something. So if anything, let that be your takeaway. Do something.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Thank
This
you.
is great. Thanks for being engaging.
Very good.
Thank you.
We'll reach out for resources.
Yeah, I think I'll get a attendance list from Harshita and I'll send a follow-up with a few links.
Thank you.
And you had maybe we ended up answering your question.
Yeah, it was a belief, not a potential.
Yeah, I think it's belief.
Yeah. Still need to work on that.
Sure, I mean, we all need to work on something with our beliefs.
Like mine is between syndications and actually buying a fleet. Like literally, it's driving me crazy. I don't know what to do.
Well, we went this year.
Do something.
You go to
I
college
don't
in
know.
Lucas, San Diego
I
College.
love the idea of
We do
syndication.
both.
Yeah.
In
Yeah, I
college,
don't have that money.
Partner with someone on the flip.
It was like,
Do
Oh,
half
yeah,
the
I could
flip.
do that.
Yeah.
But I
yeah, it
wouldn't have the money to do
was for business, but
syndication.
then.
You just do half as much.
It was for fun.
Sorry, half
As
as
much.
much.
So it was nice.
I've gone to Cabo every year.
Like two, half.
For the last 10
Sure.
years. But
My mind is like, no, it has to be
Well,
like.
Yeah, I'm curious what the opposition to doing both is.
It's not much money for on my platform. It's not very much money.
Okay. Do you mind sharing?
But it was our
Okay.
first
Well, it's
time
no, I
there.
don't
And
know.
we
I
were
wasn't-
like-
So if you partnered with somebody on Flip,
Mhm.
Yeah.
could you do it for 50,000? Your part?
Can you imagine it was right next to me?
I know, all I want, I can't, I'm trying to be